Hey, friends. Good morning and welcome to Medwell Unscripted. I'm so excited to be here with my partner in crime, Emily Waxman. Good morning, Emily. How are you?
Good morning.
My friends, we are having a special episode this week. We have our friend Colleen Higgins, and she is the award-winning author of the Cannabis Prescription. And we're going to be talking a little bit about cannabis and prescriptions, kind of a little bit about the difference and what the benefits of medicinal cannabis, which, as you know here, that is one of our favorite topics to talk about. But before we get started, I do want to let you know, friends, that Medwell Unscripted is in partnership with DocMJ, and we are the medical cannabis experts. We help you get certified and answer all your questions about medicinal cannabis and certifications. We cover Massachusetts, Florida, Ohio, Texas, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. I think I covered them all. Did I get them all, Emily?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
All right, my friends. So if you have any questions along the way, just some housekeeping. We are streaming live, so technology can sometimes be a little bit of a PITA. If one of us bumps out or has an audio, stick with us. I promise you we will be back. We are streaming to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn this morning. So welcome to all of you. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If you are catching the recording, feel free to leave another question or a comment that you stop by to visit and watch us, and we will absolutely get back to you. All right, so after all of that, today I'm going to do a quick introduction here. Emily is our Director of Community Outreach. She is out and about in Massachusetts and Florida and connecting with people nationwide. What are you up to these days, Emily, as we approach our kind of unofficial launch to summer?
I know. It's hard to believe that summer's upon us. It's so exciting. So yes, you can find me out and about in the community at your local dispensary. I usually try to stop in and have a table event and say hello to all the patients and the non-patients and answer any and all questions that you may have about obtaining your medical cannabis certification. We certainly want to make sure that we make the process nice and easy for you. So definitely, if you see me, please make sure that you stop and say hello, and please feel free to ask any and all questions. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to talk about my favorite subject and to be able to talk to all those patients out there. So definitely be on the lookout for me.
Awesome. And if you tuned in last week, friends, Emily, we had our guest from Netta and Sotera Wellness, and Emily actually will do small educational events as well. So she had a great story last week. If you haven't checked out that episode, definitely check it out, because they had a group of 20 women that you guys went out and talked about medicinal cannabis.
Yes, we had a really phenomenal time with one another, a lot of laughs, and a fun way to learn about cannabis in a very relaxed setting. So it was fantastic.
Awesome. All right, my friends. So again, we have a very special guest today, Colleen Higgins. She is an award-winning author with the Cannabis Prescription. She also is the owner of Dispensary Teams, which is an educational company, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. So we're going to learn about the Cannabis Prescription and talk a little bit about how medicinal cannabis can replace pharmaceuticals. So, and in part, this whole series that we've been running, we've been talking about seniors, boomers, a little bit about aging. So we'll talk a little bit about those topics. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our awesome guest, Colleen. How are you this morning, Colleen?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
For being here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I will say she's a fellow Connecticut gal, which I love, because we're always have guests from anywhere but Connecticut. Although, Emily, we've had like 2 guests from Connecticut, but so I'm so excited that you're here and a neighbor.
But it's always fun when it's one of your neighbors.
Yes, for sure.
Exactly. So I've been a pharmacist for quite a while, and I've been working in mostly retail settings, a little bit in hospital settings. In 2013, somebody let me know that medical cannabis was coming to Connecticut, and even more importantly, it was going to be basically run by pharmacists. So it was going to be required to be dispensed by pharmacists. And I loved that concept. So a business partner and I, we did apply for a license. It's very difficult to get a license here in Connecticut. So this was the medical license. I think at that time they only were giving out 6 licenses at a time. I didn't get a license, but I did start working in a dispensary for someone who did have a license. And I actually saw that as a benefit in the end, because while he was worried about all of the issues that come with running a medical dispensary, the regulations, the banking, the insanity, the hiring, I got to sit down with the patients and really start to understand the process of counseling patients. So I've been working in several dispensaries since 2014. And over time, I realized that A, there's no training for pharmacists and medical professionals on the products that are sold in a dispensary. And B, patients become really confused very quickly. So if you were to have somebody sit down in front of you and they've never used cannabis before, especially our patients over 65 where their disease states are starting to exacerbate and get worse, how do you explain cannabis to someone in a 30, 40-minute consultation? So that really became a passion for me. There was no training available. You have to really go out there and find it yourself. And so what I did first was to write my book, The Cannabis Prescription. I wrote that in 2019, published it in 2020. And it was meant as a reference for patients to have if they went home and they wanted to understand how to medicate for pain, for GI issues, for Parkinson's disease. And what happened is the book was actually turned into a training manual for pharmacists in the medical settings. So I was contacted by a pharmacist out in Ohio and other pharmacists that said, we're using your book. Thank you so much for your book. We're using it to train pharmacists. So the natural progression was then to develop a training course. So I have developed my training course. Emily, I know you're in Massachusetts. I was at the Boston NECAN trade show and was speaking with a bunch of the commissioners, Kim Roy, and they said, one of our biggest not blunders, I wouldn't say, but kind of mishaps was we didn't incorporate medical people into the medical cannabis program in Massachusetts. And I said, how could that be? She's like, it's just, it's something we kind of missed, but we really need that training, because I answered a question for them and they said, we need you to train us. We don't understand. The patients come to us to answer these questions, and we have difficulty training them. So I'm actually applying to be a registered vendor trainer. You have to be there. And I've my program, the Elevate the Cannabis Experience program, and I've submitted it for their advanced training as well. So this whole thing has kind of turned into a training is where it eventually landed. And so now I've been training pharmacists, and we just launched the program in February. So I'm looking to get it into dispensaries as well. And it's just a matter of understanding how to speak to a patient so as not to overwhelm them, but deliver them with just the essential information on the delivery systems, the essential cannabinoids that are available in products and how they work and the dosages. So you can really get them started. And it's a really precise method of delivering that information. So we don't have anyone that goes home and over medicates. That for me is a huge mission in my life. I read that the seniors out in California, it's about 1,300% increase in hospital visits for people over the age of 65. Wow. That's completely avoidable. So for me, it's turned into a passion of training your people so they feel confident. There's also a massive turnover rate within dispensaries. But I believe some of that is linked to training. And so for me, it's a matter of getting those great people in. There's a lot of fantastic people within the cannabis industry, and training them to help their patients and help their patients do well, and hopefully expand the program. And so people really understand the incredible value within cannabis.
Wow. Oh,
that's amazing, Colleen. Oh, just amazing. And it's so true. It's so needed here in Massachusetts for sure. And it's nice that at least they recognize, that missing piece, because it is so true.
Yeah. The Cannabis Commission in Massachusetts is really fantastic.
Yes.
They're really have a lot of different elements to it, and they're constantly upgrading it. I'm really impressed with the cannabis program in Connecticut. I love the cannabis program in Connecticut. I think it's really well run. So I think Massachusetts is also really
I agree with you. We're very lucky that we're in a state too that recognizes as many qualifying conditions too. I don't think a lot of the folks that I speak to don't even realize that they qualify for a cannabis certification because it is so inclusive.
they're a little nervous. A lot of people are a
Yes.
little nervous. They've always had that propaganda they grew up with, that it's dope,
100%.
which we know is, a complete fabrication,
Yeah.
and then where to start. And everybody, I can't tell you how many people have just thought they're going to come in and they're going to end up stoned on their couch.
Yes.
Right.
What cannabis is today. And I
Yeah.
think, you don't have to smoke it. A lot of people who've never smoked don't want to smoke. So there's multiple delivery systems. You have to understand the timing, the onset and duration. I use something called the ODD framework. If you know the onset, dose, and duration for any delivery system, you're 90% there. You can understand the timing of what it's going to be, and you pick a starting dose that's nice and low, you increase slowly, and you can find a lot of success with patients without overwhelming them, because there is so much information to learn as well.
It's so true. I can't tell you how many times I've, done panel events or trainings, and there'll be folks that will, be medical experts, but they start talking about the endocannabinoid system and how each thing affects, each, item and this and that. And by the time you look out onto the audience, they all have this glazed look, amongst them, because it's just gone completely over their head. Yeah. So it's brilliant that you're able to put it in layman's terms that they can get it and understand it and know that, this is a natural thing that's working within their system without going into all the nitty gritty that I don't think is really necessary.
Yeah. It's necessary to go into all that. When I'm teaching them to speak to patients, there's a whole debate within the cannabis industry about everything, and sativa and indica, does it really exist, and blah, 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 blah. They don't need to know all that. And they don't really. You have how are the products organized within a dispensary? You have Sunny Sativa. Sunny Sativa is mostly uplifting for 99% of the patients. I think of the thousands of people I've talked to, only 2, it went in the opposite direction, right? Because everybody's different. And then we have indica, into bed, into couch. They get it immediately. So,
I love it.
And then you have a hybrid is somewhere in between. It can lean on the sativa, it can lean on the indica, or it can be right in the middle. And then you have the CBD rich strains, which are non-psychoactive typically, until you get up to when you bring that THC up. And they're great for inflammation. They're a fantastic starting point for 99% of the patients. I think the only thing I typically don't start patients on in just pure CBD or having some CBD in is for those chemotherapy induced nausea where they really need to gain weight. CBD can actually decrease the appetite. So I started patients on a 1-to-1. But a 1-to-1 is still strong. You're still going to feel that THC. So it's not really a huge buffer. Typically, I like a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 for most, even a 5-to-1. That is a fantastic starting place for just about everything in a dispensary. It doesn't matter what delivery system you're talking about. And then you can kind of just go from there based on the patient response. It's such a great place to start without overwhelming a patient with THC.
Well, and I love, first of all, I was really excited that Emily and you connected to be on our show as I was going through kind of your posts and your LinkedIn. And I love your short videos of the educational components.
Me too.
Which really,
I love them.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as Emily said, breaking it down into layman's terms, because I think like when people do start talking cannabinoids and these big words, people just they don't understand. They don't understand, which makes it so intimidating to, especially an older demographic, but anyone, I mean, I wouldn't consider us an older demographic yet, but we're getting close. But like some of the stuff, we have some guests and super smart and they know so much about all of it. But sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what that means. So I appreciate it.
It's about translating, right? We want to bring in those new patients and we want to make it comfortable for them. And it is a new language. When you say cannabinoid, THC, CBD, sativa, indica, a lot of people are like, okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. So it's a matter.
Well, and I love your analogies of sunny sativa because what's another analogy that people call sativa? Do you remember, Emily? We've had some people have said different things for sativa.
Oh, there's a few we've heard along the way. I can't think of any, but I love that sunny sativa.
I like sunny.
I think I'm going to steal that.
I'm going to remember that one. Yeah.
inside in the couch. They get it.
Yeah, that's a
Indica
perfect
in the
one.
couch. That's
It's
perfect.
called, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Just
great.
simple sentence, one
Yes.
sentence, sum it up, and then they can, because even though we can debate it, does a sativa do this or that, that's how they're organized in a dispensary.
Yeah.
And we want them to understand how to shop in a dispensary. Our goal is to introduce them to the products, help them to find something that they like and understand how the delivery systems work, and then kind of send them on their way and then be there if they have questions. They don't need to come to us for every single purchase, for every single question. It's a matter of kind of helping them understand it, because we can. Everybody can understand cannabis eventually.
Right.
It's just, it can be overwhelming at the beginning.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point, because the every state is very different, right? So in Massachusetts, they have names of strains. In Connecticut here, they just have, it's a basic name then it has all the ingredients. So sometimes, and I know that sometimes cards are reciprocal. So knowing it from the level of what the difference is between THC and CBD, it makes a big difference, because you're looking at a label here in Connecticut, and I'm sure it's similar in other states, right? Where Massachusetts is like, I don't know, for whatever reason, the Superman strain, even if I don't even know if they call it that anymore, but so it's a big difference, and I think it's important to understand the basics.
There are a few websites, just so you know, in Connecticut, where they do the translations. There's a website called Dabbing Dad. They did shut it down. I don't know why. There was a bunch of technicians that worked at the dispensaries, and they also kept a translation as well, so the medical name plus the street name, the strain name. And that was great, but then they started to shut them down. I really don't understand why. They're a huge benefit to patients, because then you can go over onto a fantastic website like Leafly and go to town and then you can see the reviews of what people use it for. Even if you don't look at anything else, you can look at the reviews of what people use it for, and that helps patients tremendously.
It's all those digital guidelines that they like to hammer down on for no reason. So, let's go back and let's talk a little bit about how you got into cannabis. So you're a pharmacist by trade, and obviously, what was your interest in cannabis, and how did that come to be? Did you have an experience that kind of made you say, you know what, there's a need here. I want to go this direction.
After being a pharmacist, I was also working in one of those big, I won't say the name of the company, but those big companies that people are just not big fans of these days. And they're so difficult to really work with patients in. I had been using cannabis in my 20s, I think is when I started it, dealing with anxiety. It was my relaxation go-to. So, there's no calories. It's what I prefer. A lot of people don't prefer it, and they prefer other things, and that's totally fine. But for me, that's what I preferred. And I really enjoy learning new things. So for me, it was just a challenge. I am a challenge junkie. If you've got a way for me to learn things, I am all over it. And if I happen to use it as well, then that's even more fantastic. So I really, like I said, the opportunity I saw was there. And even though the licensing didn't work out, I still look for other opportunities. And to sit down with patients, I was immediately hooked. It was a disaster at first. So, one of my very first patients, I tell this story, was a lady in her 70s, and she was great. And she, we only had flour at the beginning to sell. And she took some pre-rolls home. And I didn't tell her to only take one puff, because I didn't think I needed to. Well, she smoked the whole thing, very large, very strong. And she goes, comes back in and goes, I smoked the whole thing. And I was like, she goes, for it. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Cannabis is a very safe drug. And for another person who I did not counsel later, he got sicker and didn't feel very good and had a bad experience. But for her, this lady, because it was the cigarette she had long given up, and she wanted that back. And so she thought it was a cigarette and smoked the whole thing. So I immediately learned you have to tell patients to take one puff, only 2 to 3 seconds long, and then they can move on from that. And so you just learn, and you go, and you have to have some drive, and you have to be able to make mistakes. And I made quite a few, but there's a great community to learn from. So I learned from the community, the Canadian pharmacists and doctors up there treating patients, and what they were doing, and how to mix CBD and the entourage effect. So you do learn over time. And I was hooked. I was just like, this is for me. This is very exciting. I love enjoying new things. And working in the cannabis industry can be challenging, to say the least, but I really have a real passion for helping patients understand it. And the patients that would come in had the most amazing stories of what they were going through. Typically, they end up there because the other pharma drugs aren't working. So it was very interesting to mix the two and to see how to change dosage if they're on a ton of pain medications and something crazy happened to them. And it's not like they're a drug addict. They have some serious stuff going on and it's not working. They're either passing out or they're in pain. That's the choice. Then this is another option. And when they do so well on it, it is incredibly rewarding. So I love helping patients really find relief with cannabis and understanding the products.
Awesome.
Colleen, do you get asked a lot? Oh, I'm sorry, April.
No, go ahead.
Get asked a lot. I get this question quite a bit, especially from some of our senior friends about interaction with their medication and with cannabis. A lot of them do get a little nervous. And I have heard of some medications that could have a little bit of a, interaction. Is there anything specific you can think of that, you tell folks that are nervous about that if they're on, for example, I've heard blood pressure medication can sometimes, be an interaction.
Constantly learning. And it's constantly changing. So there are some, there's a heavy antipsychotic that there's not a lot of people on I'm not even going to mention. Warfarin is a blood thinner. Not many people are on that anymore. They're moving over to the other generation blood thinners, and those might have a slight interaction with them, but it's just a matter of kind of keeping up with the information. And I have found at the very beginning, I called them all the time when I had questions. It's called the Realm of Caring. They're a nonprofit out of Colorado. If you go to their website, they have always an updated list of the latest drug interactions and studies to go with them. And I'm constantly asking people. So I had a cardiac nurse come in and also was familiar with cannabis. And I said, let me ask, is there a real drug interaction? Are you seeing this drug interaction with the cardiac drugs? And she goes, it's about the same as an antibiotic that you may have to watch for. We're not seeing major drug because of course you want to be conservative with your cardiac patients, but over time that you learn these things. So we are seeing some drug interactions with blood thinners, which is always a scary thing to say, but I'm not seeing as much in terms of the blood pressure, but in terms of updating that information constantly. The Realm of Caring is a fantastic resource because they're constantly updating it. They have monthly meetings with all doctors coming in saying what they see. So they tell you the latest information as they see it. And then they supply studies as well that go along with it. So it's exactly what we want to know as healthcare professionals.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm definitely going to check that out for sure. What a great resource. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. And actually I want to include that in our email newsletter too. That's awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about the book. So the Cannabis Prescription, kind of give us a little background about why you decided to write this. Obviously, clearly there's a need for it in the marketplace of educating, and kind of just share with us.
It was the best compliment I got was from one of my technicians who says, this sounds like you wrote it as a pharmacist. I was like, oh, thank you. That's exactly the way I want it to sound. So it's not a lot. There's a little bit of information about the background of why cannabis was made illegal and all that kind of stuff, which is a really interesting story. But I wanted to approach it the way a pharmacist would talk to a patient about their medications. So the onset, the dose, the duration, the delivery systems and how they differ. So, a lot of people come in and say, I want the edibles, and you typically may not be best using an edible. If you have acute panic or you have acute nausea, using something that's going to take an hour to work isn't going to be optimal. So, and also how do you increase the dose? If you're taking a tincture, a 3-to-1 tincture, and you start off at a nice low dose, how do you increase it? How often? And that's a lot of information. So all that and then all my experience with the different diseases. Parkinson's was fantastic and amazing, and GI issues, pain, nerve pain, where to start. So all of this kind of kept floating around in my head. And in 2019, I just sat down and knew I wanted to write a book. Didn't know how to write a book. So I just kind of dumped out 76,000 words and hired an editor, and she got it into shape and made it look like a book. She was absolutely fantastic. And I really, really enjoyed the writing process. I actually like to get more into medical writing, but I really wanted to find a reference book that patients could pick up and say, how do I use an inhaled? What's the difference? What's up with an edible? What's good for pain? Is it different than nerve pain? And it really came together. I'm so proud of it. It came together really, really well. And then, of course, I ran into the issue of working in the cannabis industry where you can't advertise it. So if I try to advertise it on, Amazon, or they shut you down immediately. Facebook shut me down immediately. So getting it out there and the word out there. I do podcasts. I'm so thankful to be on here to let people know that it's available for them, because when people pick it up, they really do enjoy it. And like I said, they use it to train their staff. This weekend, I was in Hartford at the trade show, and they said, "Oh, we use your book to train our staff." And I thought, well, let me go over and tell you about the course. So yeah, it was just kind of meant for the patients, and then it's now working out for the medical professionals as well. So I'm super, super happy with it. In fact, it was only published in 2020, but I'm starting on the second version because things change so rapidly, right? We have cannabinoids, and so I'm updating it now.
Oh, that's great.
Friends, I did drop 2 links in the chat here. I dropped a link to the website, but I also dropped a direct link to the Amazon for the Kindle version or the for the book version. And I want to say, like, the reviews, I think what's really interesting, and I think it says a lot about the information that you're sharing, is there's a lot of RNs, pharmacists in your reviews, and talking about what wonderful information is. And it really kind of, it breaks through the barriers and shares good information that people should be reading and learning about, and kind of the facts as opposed to what you hear.
Yeah. It's focused, right? It's focused on what we as medical people, how we speak, what we are concerned about. And it's a narrow scope of what we are concerned about, but it translates really easily for patients to understand as well. Because as pharmacists, that's what we do, right? We talk to patients and we translate these complex drugs and make them simple for them to understand so they can be most effective for them. So that's what I tried to do with the cannabis and the delivery systems. And I'm super happy with it. I really enjoyed writing it.
That's amazing. And I love that it's like almost like a trickle down with the training, because it's like you have this book that, it can be used in so many facets. And you happened to mention earlier about the turnover in the cannabis industry. And I think a lot of it is exactly what you said. A lot of it is due to not having that training and investing in these really phenomenal folks that just, aren't getting the information that they need. That's why April and I had come up a few years back with something called Medwell Academy, where we were able to actually make a training program for dispensary folks about the process in Massachusetts of how to obtain your medical card. Because if you have folks coming in all the time and asking about, the process, and they haven't gone through it themselves, how would they ever be able to know how to instruct someone? So, it's just so important that, you're able to offer this sort of training. And I hope that a lot of folks invest in it, because it's so important. It's so successful for the dispensary to be able to have these folks that continue to remain there. And it's so even more so for the patients to be able to get the information that they need. So, I do hope that for anyone that's listening, that they do reach out to you for that.
It's tough to break through this mentality of some of these owners, because a lot of big cannabis is buying out these small owners. I was really into the small owner in mind, but I'm finding that a lot of big cannabis is taking over. And I had a technician this weekend that I spoke with, and she said, "Oh, we use your book. My pharmacists use your book to train." I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I'll have to stop over and let them know about the course." And I said, "How do they train you?" She goes, "They basically print out a bunch of handouts from Leafly, and they hand it to us." It's like, gosh, you just little, and my bud tender course is only 5 hours. The medical course is a little under 10. So, and I'm kind of tweaking it to fit to Mass and to other states, but not a lot of time.
Right.
To have them. And we follow up with webinars and questions, and any questions they have, they can toss at us. And if new products come in, we can go over those as well. But that little bit of training, and let me tell you, pharmacy is all over training. Pharmacy trains. It's been around for 200 years, and they understand the value of training. And you can go into any pharmacy and it's the same, because they understand the value of training. And if you don't have that, you're missing such a key element in your business. And to have that experience for the patient be so much better. I know if I've been to a dispensary, and I know this is a good one. So I was in Vegas. And I like to, everywhere I go, I like to stop in a dispensary just to see what the experience is about.
Sure.
And I tell them the same thing. I have trouble sleeping. Hello. And I'm looking for your knockout edibles. So, right, we're looking for some myrcene if they're looking for at the terpenes and stuff like that. And the last one I went to was a very highly regarded dispensary. The girl was so sweet, and she goes, "Oh, that's so wonderful. I have this 100 milligram capsule. It's super potent." And I was like, "Capsule? I can't break a capsule down." And she's like, "No." And I was like, "I don't take 100 milligrams." And my first thought was, why didn't you ask me what my tolerance level was? Or have I taken it before? Or do I have a dose that I prefer?
Right.
Any of those questions would be a great starting point.
Yes.
But if maybe she thought I was an expert or something, but I'm like a 10 milligram when I take an edible.
Right.
Milligram would be an extremely bad day. So I just, I was like, this is why we need this to really make
it's so true. Because how sad if some, senior friend of ours, ended up taking that and having just the worst possible experience ever.
Yeah.
And that would have been the end of their cannabis journey,
They will
and they have that age demographic has that stigma still. So I think you're absolutely right. That would be horrible.
Yeah. And it's not, that's not alone. It happens all the time where they don't know where to start, or they think 10 milligrams is a starting dose. 10 milligrams is not a starting dose. You have to tell them to take one short puff or one spray or what the dose should be. You have to give that advice, or half a gummy, whatever it is, in order to get them to understand that you start low. I mean, this is for pretty much every drug. You start low, and after a certain amount of time, you evaluate it. And if you need a little bit more, you go up. It's very simple. And if you can present that information in a concise and just value-driven way, they will appreciate you. It's so wonderful to have patients come back and say, I've wasted so much money and so much time trying all these different things, and it just wasn't working. And just in a very precise way of delivering it, they're able to tune in and find out what works for them. And I appreciate it so much. So it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of time to train your staff, and they want it. They want to train. They want to understand how to
agree.
Which is a great opening to tell us about Dispensary Teams, your business.
Yes. So Dispensary Teams, we have our bud tender and our medical training. They are for dispensary staff as well. So like I said, we're trying to get into, at this point, Massachusetts and Maryland and other states to be part of their required training. And it's also available for pharmacists and healthcare practitioners who want to understand how to speak to their patients about the products that are sold and the accessories that are sold in dispensaries, so they can understand those products and they don't have to change the conversation. If you ask a practitioner about cannabis, they typically change the subject because they just don't understand it. So this course will help them understand that. And every person that I've had, every medical professional that's done it has said 5-star reviews. This is absolutely fantastic. Amazing. And then there's another unlimited questions. You can ask as many questions until you feel like you are an expert on this drug. Because remember, it's just a drug, right? We take CE credits, continuing education credits, and all kinds of stuff. So, and I'm working on actually getting it continuing education certification. So they'll be able to get some CE credits as well. But for now, it's just a matter of, so they can speak to their patients and they can understand the products that their patients are already using.
I can see a lot of value to adding to, like, a lot of the colleges or even the community colleges locally have that certificate program they're running in the cannabis industry, that connecting with them, that might be a good resource too, because they're very, if you look at the course curriculum, they're very, they're cut and dry, right? So they're not always real life sometimes, I think,
You're going to be a cannabis expert.
Yeah. Exactly. I want to say I wanted to say that politically correct without being like, but yeah. So
you want it to be value, right? You want to be able to use it in your day-to-day practice, in your day-to-day life.
True.
Yes, absolutely. So, Colleen, what's the best way to connect with you? I shared your LinkedIn profile. I shared to Amazon. I shared to your website for your book. Is there anywhere else that people should connect with you, or is there a best way to connect with you?
So they can the easiest way to connect with me is through the website, because my email is up there, info@elevatethecannabisexperience.com. It's also linked through Dispensary Teams. So if you could just go to Dispensary Teams, that'll bring you right to the website as well. That has a link to the book. It's got blogs. It's got, and I'm on LinkedIn every day. I'm so glad you mentioned the videos, because you do these little videos and you wonder, is anybody watching?
Oh, I'm watching them. I love them.
Yeah, no, I thought they were great. And you know what? It's just enough information that people can sit on it, think on it, and it's not overwhelming. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
LinkedIn has been a great resource for me. I've made a lot of fantastic connections on LinkedIn as well. So they can always reach out on LinkedIn. I'm always checking it and getting back to people. So LinkedIn is kind of, that's been the only really cannabis friendly platform. I've been kicked off Facebook, was kicked off Twitter. Thank you, Elon Musk, for bringing us back. I'm not kicked off Instagram. So, you kind of just figure out where you are allowed to show up these days.
So true.
You might have to try to come back. You might have to try to come back to Instagram, because they lessen some of their stuff. So you might have to, yeah.
Okay. They locked my Facebook account. I can't seem to get that unlocked. So
you might have to come back as a pseudo name, and then
always this crazy. It's in the cannabis industry. It's a wild ride. We got to play these.
It
games.
really is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and all that you do. It's really it's been an honor having you today and learning from you. So thank you so much.
This has been really, really fun. Thanks so much. Anytime, come back anytime. This was great.
Oh,
awesome.
I'll be asking for sure.
Okay. Love it.
So my friends, make sure if you are catching the replay, definitely ask a question. I will get back to you, and Colleen will make sure that we get an answer from Colleen. Again, check out the chat for all of the links to Colleen's information, including her book, as well as her training programs. And Emily and I will be back next week. We actually have a special announcement next week when we come on. So be sure to tune in. We're excited to share that with you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great long weekend, my friends. Thank you to all of our veterans as we honor you this weekend. So thanks. Happy Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.